What's happening, people? Very good afternoon, evening to you all. This is your boy, the Boxing Lowdown, here for episode number 73 of the Boxing Lowdown podcast, man. And you know what time it is. Always delighted to be joined by my co-host. He's right here in the building. Mr. Laurie from AFTV in the house, man. How's it going?
I am the referee.
We're gonna have to talk about that.
A bit of Ian John Lewis there, man. He was the referee. I don't think he's going to be reffing any high-profile fights for a minute, man. And some of us who've been watching him for years will probably welcome that. Although I would say it would appear that he's been made the scapegoat for all this. There's always has to be a fall guy, and it appears that he's the fall guy. But hey.
Let's get cooking, man. Let's get cooking, man. Like you've touched on it. We'll jump straight onto it. Shout out to everybody, first of all, that's joining the stream. Big up you guys every single time. Hit the like button once you join. Share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And yeah, looking forward to welcoming you in your comments. We've got a very good show today. Some great topics to talk about. So let's dive straight into it, man. Let's start off with the breaking. Well, it's not breaking news. It came out a few hours ago. But the news that the British Boxing Board of Control, as we knew, were looking into this Taylor Catterall scoring. They said that they were going to do an investigation. As a result of that, it seems Ian John Lewis has now been demoted. He's been demoted as a referee and a judge. And they have sent out a letter to all of the sanctioning bodies requesting that Jack Catterall be made mandatory challenger for whoever holds the belt. So some action was taken from the British Board of Boxing Control. I didn't think that much would be done at all. I guess this is, something. Jack Catterall's not happy with it. I saw him respond on Twitter saying that this wasn't good enough. Was it ever going to be good enough? What do you think?
No, I mean, number one is that if you're Jack Catterall, why would you care if Ian John Lewis has been seemingly demoted? It's not going to affect the fight, is it? And this so-called letter to the sanctioning bodies, do you really think that in Mexico and Panama and those places, they just look at that and go, they just kiss the Panamanian version of kissing your teeth. They're going to say, who are these men to tell us what to do? I mean, these sanctioning bodies don't operate like that. I mean, listen, Jack Catterall does deserve to get a shot next time around. But, the British Boxing Board of Control sending a letter to the sanctioning bodies. It may carry some weight with the WBO because I know they've got good relationships with them, man, there. But the other guys, WBC, WBA, IBF, and them, man, there, they operate by their own set of rules. And they'll just be looking at that as virtue signaling. They'll be looking at that letter as just, yeah, whatever, thanks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've got their own business to take care of. And what suits them best is what they'll go with. If there's a fighter in that part of the country where they think more money can be made there, then that's what they're going to go with. You know what I mean?
Are you happy with the punishment? Well, not punishment, but you're happy with the outcome. Let me say that.
Not really, because to be honest, what does it really mean? It means nothing, really, does it? It's tokenistic, really, isn't it? It just smacks of tokenism. And like I said, although, don't get me wrong, I think that Ian John Lewis should have been stood down way before now. Because Daryl, anybody that follows boxing in this country, he's been guilty of making poor decisions in boxing for many years now.
Yeah,
we've often looked at Ian John Lewis scorecard or refereeing, and you're sort of scratching your think, what? You know what I mean? You go to anybody that watches boxing in this country for a sufficient length of time, and they'll tell you the same thing. He's always been poor.
Yeah.
For him getting stood down for, I don't know how long this is going to be, if it's indefinite or what, or if there's a fixed time on his demotion, I don't know. Sounds to me like probably what they'll do, they hide him away for a few months and then probably bring him back on sort of lower profile fights. I don't know, man. But if you're Jack Catterall, really, that doesn't do anything, really. But then we knew that anyway, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then when you had the guy, Rob Smith, saying things like, I know my officials are not corrupt and blah, blah, blah. Then basically, it was just a token. It was always going to be a token gesture for me.
Yeah.
Because he was telling us before they'd even launched the investigation that there was nothing wrong with the officials. They're not corrupt. It's just honest misjudgment or whatever. So that kind of gave you an inclination as to what was going to happen, which was not much, if anything. What did Patrol say?
Let me just pick up everyone in the chat here. First of all, Harvey's in the building. Francisco is here. Ian is here. Shout out to all of you guys, man. Enough love and respect. Yeah, like I said, Jack Catterall basically just said not good enough. That's all he said. Did you see earlier on in the week the MP for Chorley, which is where Catterall is from, basically making a complaint to the police about the scoring? I mean, come on, you're overdoing it now. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, but I think, to be fair, he did that knowing that he was just going to bring awareness to what was going on. I don't think for 1 minute he seriously thought that it was going to do anything other than to just keep it in the news, maybe put a bit of pressure on the British Boxing Board of Control to do something. But then, like we said, that fight, although it was in Britain, it's not really under their jurisdiction, is it? They are, yes, they're, in terms of appointing officials, fair enough. But in terms of, say, an immediate rematch or overturning a decision and stuff like that, that would have to be under the auspices of the different sanctioning bodies. And like I said, because it's a fractured state in terms of, who's overseeing these things, that was never going to happen.
No. I mean, Taylor still, obviously he still believes that he's won. He said that.
Does he?
Yeah.
He said he does actually knowing Josh Taylor.
Yeah, he said he watched the fight again, and he said that, he said he felt he edged it by a couple of rounds. Apparently
two words I've got for that: cognitive dissonance. Go Google that. Yeah? Basically, that translates to he just doesn't like. He was always going to look at it that way. So that's Josh Taylor for you.
Yeah, his missus apparently has been getting a lot of death threats online, which can't be an advocate. No, don't understand what that's all about. But yeah, I mean, this situation, I was never in hope that the decision's going to get overturned. That was never going to happen. I never had those sort of expectations. So I just think that the fact that the public put so much pressure on the British Boxing Board of Control kind of forced them into doing something. Because make no mistake, if we didn't, they wouldn't be doing anything. That's just my honest opinion. They wouldn't have done anything if it wasn't for the public pressure over this fight.
I'll tell you what I found interesting about this whole thing is there's two things I found interesting actually. Is that in the immediate aftermath of the fight, everybody was saying, it was a robbery, which I personally think it was a robbery. I personally don't think it was a particularly hard fight to score. To me, I had Catterall a clear winner, 3-4 rounds easy. I thought he won that fight by. To me, it wasn't close. I mean, if you've got a 12-round fight and you've got somebody 8-4, to me, that's not close. Yeah. But I'll tell you what I found interesting is that as the days have gone by, more people are coming out and say, well, I watched it and there's a couple of swing rounds in there. And I'm thinking, really, this character certainly developed. And then, of course, you go on Twitter and you listen to some of the American guys and American websites, and they're saying, I thought it was closer. I watched the fight back and I don't think Catterall did enough to rip the title away and all that. And I'm thinking, somehow, somewhere, the narrative has kind of switched a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I personally still think it will go down as a robbery to me.
Yeah, I'm not having that. Just because some time's gone, that don't mean that's going to change my opinion. So, Lee Wood was one of them. He come out and said he thought that there was swing rounds. He thought Josh Taylor might have done enough to. I'm not buying this, man.
But he's got a vested interest in it. Who's his trainer?
Exactly. I know what I saw.
You know what I mean?
I know what I saw, man, and I'm not letting no one dissuade that just because some time's gone. The fire's dimmed a little bit from that. It was a robbery, and I don't use that.
I think some of the narratives just shifted because I think some people are feeling a little bit sorry for Josh Taylor and the way.
I don't feel sorry for Josh Taylor one bit.
No, not you. I'm talking about. I've seen things on Twitter saying, look, stop giving Josh Taylor and his wife stick. It had nothing to do with it, which is absolutely true. It did have nothing to do with him. But I think because of that narrative has switched, people are also sort of revising their opinions now. You know what I mean? All of a sudden it's gone from, it was robbery to, well, actually, I watched it back and There was a few swing rounds in there, and if you score this one to that one, and if you gave Taylor that 8th round, then when I tally up my cards, there's only a round or 2 in it, so I could go, get out of here, man. You know what I mean? Capture won the fight comfortably. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Big up Harvey. He says here, I know Ian John Lewis had the worst scorecard, but the other judge that scored it for Taylor should be held accountable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
IB, big up IB.
He's been made a scapegoat.
IB has said here, this just shows the public pressure. It's only this just shows that public pressure is the only way the British Boxing Board of Control will look into anything. I didn't see the same energy for Vasquez and Ritson. Ian John Lewis will be back judging these fights soon. That's pretty much what Shane was saying when he was on here a couple of weeks ago talking about it, wasn't it? Like different energy for different fighters. Shane
made a very good point, which is a point that I didn't pick up on initially, although I do thoroughly believe it, which is that, if had it have involved a foreign fighter, there wouldn't have been this level of outrage, which, let's be honest, that's fair. That's a fair comment. But yeah, man, I mean, it was an awful decision. I'm not going to have nobody convince me otherwise. I watched the fight. You know me, Daryl. I scored the fight as I went along, and I had Capture winning clearly. 3-4 rounds, easy. You know what I mean? He landed more consistently. I mean, he outscored Josh Taylor by 100 punches. You know what I mean? That is a significant margin. I mean, okay, we know that sometimes you can't always judge a fight on volume, because sometimes, when a guy scores more punches than the other guy, sometimes the quality of the punches are not always there. But come on, man, 100 punches. You know what I mean? And he dropped Taylor. He hurt him visibly a couple of times, and he was controlling most of the action in there. Yes, Taylor did press the action, certainly towards the end of the fight. He was the one coming forward. But for me, he wasn't really landing anything significant, man.
Yeah, you know what I mean? All this talk about, like what Frotch said after, down the stretch, he gave round. It doesn't, if you've got rounds in the bank, listen, it's scored on a 10-point must system, rounds 1 to 12. He dropped Taylor in that fight as well. Both of them had a point deducted, so that evens itself out. Are you honestly telling me that how many of them late rounds do you really think Jack Catterall gave away? Remember, Taylor only landed about 5 or 6 punches throughout the last couple of rounds in that fight. So I'm not buying it, man. I'm not buying what any of these other guys are saying. I know what I saw.
Yeah, exactly. We all know what we saw, and I don't care what these guys say. It's revisionist thinking on their part, and they're not going to get me to change my mind, man. We all saw what happened. It was a travesty of justice. What I would say, though, it's not by any means being the only one, or even the worst one I've seen. There's been worse than that. But that's boxing. I mean, even allowing for subjectivity. We talked about subjectivity, and there is a degree of that. Whenever you get sports like boxing where people score things, you know what I mean? There's a set of criteria, but then you have to apply your scoring to those criteria. You're always going to get, slight variations. But this was variations too far, man. Because listen, I'm like you and like a lot of people I spoke to and a lot of people I've seen online. If the fight was genuinely close, Daryl, I could say, well, actually, I can see why they might have gone towards Taylor, him being the home fighter, him being the champion. But it wasn't like that, especially over the first, say, 7-8 rounds. There were like clear rounds for Catterall, and he's dropped the guy as well. So straight away after round 8, the way I was scoring it, you're already into the territory where Josh Taylor needs a knockout to win the fight.
Yep.
So how you can judge him, and so you're telling me that after round 8, Josh Taylor swept rounds 9 to 12? No, he didn't. You know what I mean? He did not. So it's impossible for him to have won that fight, man.
Not for me. But just before we move on here, a comment from IB is put here. Just a weekly reminder that John Fury is a bully and a bum that lives off his son's name. Not the most popular guy in the chat. But let's move on, man. There was a fight last weekend I want to quickly go over before we talk about this week's this week's topics. That was, of course, Chocolatito against Julio Cesar Martinez. Chocolatito, just different level, wasn't he? Different gravy, different, all about levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say that was one fight where there's no way you could have given it to the other guy. But then, of course, we saw with Chocolatito, he was a victim of some scandalous judging on one of his fights. Was it Estrada? A few fights ago? Yeah. So I guess it's not just Britain, it happens, man. But yeah, man, I mean, In terms of Chocolatito, wow, what a performance, man. Sensational performance. There's so many good things to pick out about that performance. I think I could just sum it up by saying, if you had a son or a daughter and, you know what I mean, they're watching boxing for the first time, or you're trying to teach them certain things about the sport, you would let them watch that, wouldn't you? He was almost punch perfect. And what I particularly liked about that is, and I'm sure you would appreciate this, Darryl, is the way that he was able to transition from defense to attack. Yeah. And it was just so smooth. It was effortless. I've always said, you know, in sports, right, you could always tell the great ones because they seem to make it look easy. If you look at the great footballers, the Messis, the Ronaldos, and Mbappe's, and whoever, the Henrys, and whoever, I mean, whoever you want to choose as your great player, they have a habit or a way of making great things seem almost effortless, easy, and you think, wow, you know what I mean? They're just elite levels, man, and that's what he showed last weekend, elite levels of boxing, and it was superb to watch.
Yeah, Julio Cesar Martinez was never really in it. He came overweight. Do you know what I mean? Despite moving up in weight, and he was just never at the races, man. So listen, I was happy for Chocolatito, obviously, but yeah, as for Julio, he was brave. The corner could have stepped in at some point.
I think they should have done. I think they should, but it's that Mexican machismo, isn't it? One thing I would say, and you did make a good point there, Darryl. If I'm going to put a slight caveat on what Gonzalez or Chocolatito produced at the weekend, you would have to balance it up by saying, as brilliant as he was, that opponent was kind of tailor-made for him, isn't it? Because the opponent, in terms of the level of boxing skill he showed, was pretty poor. Basically just swung arm punches all night. Didn't seem to have a game plan. Like you said, he didn't make the weight, so he probably wasn't in the best condition going into the fight. So we do have to take that into account a little bit. The opponent wasn't the best, although he was a very good fighter. But in terms of boxing, he got completely outclassed, man. And he didn't seem to have any way of making any adjustments because he's just not that type of fighter. He's just one of those guys that are aggressive. They only know how to fight one way. So he got totally exposed by a brilliant performance by Chocolatito.
I did a video this week on my channel, and it was about Chocolatito's performance. And I compared him to his mentor, who he looked up to, obviously another great, who was born in the same country, Nicaragua, Alexis Arguello. Is it time to, if you haven't already, look at Roman Gonzalez as somebody that surpassed the achievements of Alexis Arguello? Francisco did comment on that video, and he's made a comment on Gonzalez here. I remember his comment. He said he didn't think it was enough to pass Arguello yet. But you know your boxing, your historian. Like, what do you think? Has he surpassed him?
That's a very good question, because I remember watching Alexis Arguello. I can remember, this is how far I go back, Alexis Arguello coming over here and schooling Jim Watt. Now, you remember Jim Watt as a commentator on Sky in boxing. He's a good commentator as well, actually. But back in the day, man, he was a very creditable and accomplished boxer, a boxer puncher. And Alexis Arguello came over here back in the day and absolutely schooled him. And I remember as well, Alexis Arguello having a couple of great fights with Aaron Pryor. You know what I mean? So that's how good Alexis Arguello was. As to who's better, it's kind of different. It's difficult to compare eras. They're both great fighters. I think I'd rather leave it as that. You know what I mean? Because maybe you need to ask somebody from Nicaragua. You know what I mean?
Three guys that the country could be proud of. Let's just leave it as that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mean, it was an amazing performance at that age as well, in those little weights too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What is he, 34, 35 now?
Yeah, I think 35, 34, 35, yeah.
35 when you consider that he's the very small weight at the lower end of the spectrum, if say he was a welterweight, you're looking at somebody probably in his 40s. That's how the way you look at it, because the smaller guys, they tend to age a bit quicker, you know what I mean, than the bigger guys. So that was a phenomenal performance. But like I said, you do have to counterbalance it by saying that the opponent was kind of made for Chocolatito insofar as he didn't really have a game plan. He didn't really have tactics. He just went out there and let his hands go And when that didn't work, he just went out there and let his hands go. And when that didn't work, he just stopped punching for a while and then let his hands go again. There were, you know what I mean? You could see that he had nothing, no real tactics or nothing, man. But then he was just outclassed.
Den's saying here, just finished watching Talk is Cheap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, bro. Yeah, respect. Good show this week. It was me and Robbie on there.
Yeah.
We were talking about Arsenal's crop of youngsters and saying, at the moment, are they the best crop of youngsters in the Premier League? And not surprisingly, we both said yes.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna.
But we think it's justified at the moment, anyway. You know what I mean? So
Nathan says had a few comments about the undercard as well. That Lara fight, man. What a fight that was.
Man. That was yeah.
Maurizio Lara, man. I'm telling you, man. Like we already spoke about this. Do you think Josh Warrington? I mean, to be fair, he did go back in the ring from the second time, but if he
did drop though, didn't he?
Martinez, do you think that? Like, I don't know. What do you reckon, man? Do you reckon that they could have a third fight?
I don't think it's a fight that Josh Warrington will be seeking out. Not if he's clever, because even in that second fight, man. I mean, I know you thought he got away with one there, didn't you?
Yeah, I do.
And quite a few people I spoke to had the same type of opinion. And that's no disrespect to Josh Warrington. But listen, unless you're a really accomplished boxer like a Chocolatito, man, or unless you got the power to stick it on him when he comes looking for you like that, you're going to be in for a long night with that guy, man, because he's of that age and he's got that power and that kind of fearlessness where it works for him. You know what I mean? He's an extremely difficult opponent. But he is the type of opponent that can be outboxed quite easily. When I say easy, I don't mean it in the sense that anyone can do it. But you know what I'm saying? A really good boxer will be able to outbox him for long spells of the fight. Whether you can keep him off completely for 12 rounds is another matter. But does someone like Josh Warrington have that level of skill to do that and the toughness that you're going to need? That's a different matter, man. When I used to see Floyd sort of turning guys on their head and outboxing them, again, making it look easy, people think, they kind of minimize the achievement, but it's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very difficult thing to do. So listen, man, if I'm Josh Warrington's managers, I would probably swerve that fight. But hey, man, Josh Warrington is a warrior, though. I'll give him that. So I don't think he's scared of him. But does it make sense, business sense, for him to have a third fight? I'd rather steer him in another direction, to be honest.
Well, let's see how we get some with Kiko Martinez first. We've got a comment here from Stefan. Big up, Stefan, man. He says here, Dougie Fisher, that's your boy, Laurie, innit? Had Josh Taylor beating Catterall, and he somehow gave Martinez 4 rounds. I'm not sure what's worse. He gave Martinez 4 rounds. Wow. What, against Chocolatito? Yeah, that's poor.
Listen, man, I say this week after week on this show, and people think, oh, I'm hating, or, you know, I've got some kind of grudge against these guys. It's from years of watching boxing. I see what these guys do to the sport, man. You know what I mean? They are enemies of the sport, if anything, because what they do, they latch on to certain people, normally champions, and they just dick ride. You know what I mean? It's no surprise to me that Doug Fisher does that. No surprise to me that the next day I went online and there was Dan Raphael saying that he'd scored it to Josh Taylor. And do you know, right, that he actually, I heard him on the radio the other day, I don't know if it was TalkSport or Adam Catterall's show, saying that he thought that Catterall won. So he's gone from saying that he got no problem with Josh Taylor winning. I thought he did enough to win. Now he's changed his mind again. And he actually admitted on the show that he'd been getting a lot of stick. So that's probably why he's now switched from saying Taylor to Catterall. These guys have got no, I keep saying it, Daryl, and I maintain it till the cows come home. Those guys, him and Doug Fisher and people like that, they've got no integrity. They may have a level of knowledge, you know, and of course they're on the inside of the game, so they're going to know certain things that me and you don't. Yeah, I'll give them that. But they lack integrity to me. That's why I can't really respect them. You know what I mean? So, because they're all about feathering their own nest. What suits their business model is what they're going to go with. So they'll dick ride guys like Josh Taylor, Canelo, 1 or 2 other people, Ring, the sort of golden boy, Ring magazine people, and their journalism skewed as a result. I can't take them seriously, bro. I can't.
Yeah. Francisco says here, Arguello had more talent and he faced higher level competition than Gonzalez, but Gonzalez has achieved more. So it's okay if you rank Gonzalez higher, but for style and classic fights, I prefer Arguello. Would you agree with that statement, Lloyd?
I wouldn't hate on that. Because I was a big fan of Alexis Arguello, and you know, I mean, let's be honest. Let's be brutally honest. I know some people may not like me saying this, but in the kind of weight classes that Arguello was fighting at, man, there were some real killers there, even at that time. So I would probably lean towards Arguello, but you're going to get, you know, some people, because Chocolatito is the flavor of the month, they're going to ride off into the sunset and say, yeah, he's the best to ever do it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, already seeing people say he should be top of the pound for pound and he's better than Floyd, better than Manny. No, I'm not saying all that. He's a great fighter, though, but I'm not going to go too far with it. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Let's segue into our next topic for the day, man. And listen, big fight this weekend between Lee Wood and Michael Conlan. I know you spoke about this last week, how much you were looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to this. This is it, man. Not in the Marina is going to be buzzing. Michael Conlan, someone that I've enjoyed, you know, like watched his career from the amateurs. He had a very great amateur career. Lee Wood really coming into his own on the form of his life. Both of these guys coming off their career best wins. Bit of grudge, bit of needle between the two. Going to be settled on Saturday. Michael Conlan, I want to speak about him to you quickly. Do you believe that he should be further in his career than he is now, considering the hype that surrounded him when he turned pro? Would you say he'd be happy with his career development so far? Bearing in mind we did have a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all his fault. I mean, and again, when he turned pro, he started off in America and there was a big fanfare about him because they love, like, the Irish, the whole tradition. Remember, he's coming out to fights dressed as a leprechaun and all that type of stuff. I think his first fight, his debut, was walked out to the ring by Conor McGregor, or something like that. So they had massive hopes for him. I don't know what exactly happened, whether they found it difficult for him to get fights, but he did relocate back here. And since he's relocated back into the UK, he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit. But you can't argue with his quality. And I'm really looking forward to this fight, man.
A lot of people saying that. A lot of people don't like his style. They think he might be a bit. They think. From the comments I've read, I'm not necessarily agreeing, but people saying that they think he's, you know, boring to watch. They don't think that he talks better than he fights in terms of, like, hasn't delivered as a pro yet. And that's a strange thing to say considering what he's achieved. But a lot of the criticism has been around his style and whether he'll be able to hang with someone like Lee Wood in there.
Well, you would have thought so. I mean, you look at his amateur record, man. He was an outstanding amateur. Commonwealth Games gold medalist, Olympic Games bronze medalist, and he was robbed in those Olympics as well. He was actually the AIBA #1 amateur in the world for a period of time. And, you know, I mean, he was a great amateur and he was expected to not walk it to a world title, but you know what I'm saying? I thought he would have been a world titleist by now, to be honest. There was talk. I remember when he turned pro, there was talks of him sort of being on a par with Shakur Stevenson.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
Stevenson now, he's already won a world title and looking to unify it against Oscar Valdez. So, you know, if you compare him to that, then you would say his career has not fulfilled his potential yet. But this is his big night, man. This is the night where, you know what I mean, he has to step up and show people like me and you and other people out there what he's made of. And that's why I'm really looking forward to his fight, because I think in a guy like Lee Wood, who's not had anywhere near the sort of hype that he's had, but you get a guy like Lee Wood who's sort of coming into his prime, even though he's 33 years old, but he's kind of peaking now, isn't it, in terms of his physicality and his confidence levels and, you know, where he is at the game right now. And, of course, he carries legitimate power at this weight, coming off a great win against Kanju or Jukan, whatever you want to say. Hugely impressive win. And he's going to be full of confidence. He's fighting in his hometown. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if this goes the distance, which I suspect it might. Whether there might be, you know what I mean, some next controversy.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I didn't think of that until now.
Yeah. I was thinking about that today because, let's be honest, man, Conlan does have the better skills. Yeah. Despite what Ben Davison and Lee Wood are saying, to me, Conlan does have the better skills, but Lee Wood physically looks the bigger, and he's clearly got the bigger pop in his hands, or so we think anyway.
Yeah.
And he's not bad skills wise either. And I was quite impressed with him against Kanju. He's winning most of those rounds, if not all of them. He was, wiping the floor with that guy. Went on to stop him. Like I said, hugely impressive. Can he do that to Michael Conlan? Well, we'll see. I mean, Michael Conlan, he's one of those guys who's quite feisty, isn't he? He's the kind of guy that could start an argument in an empty room. And they're coming into this fight, man, with a bit of a chip on their shoulder, aren't they? Him and his brother. You know what I mean? They're talking it up. There's going to be a lot of Irish fans in the house, apparently. I'm really looking forward to this one, man. It could be one of those legitimate fight of the year type candidates. Don't you think?
I think so, yeah. Ian Hamilton says here, the fight this week will be won based on who starts the best. If Conlan dictates with his jab and boxing, Wood will struggle to get him dragged into a fight. It's an intriguing one for me.
Yeah. I have to say, if it goes to points,
you got to say
put money on Conlan. If there's going to be an inside schedule victory, then I'd have to go with Lee Wood. But that's not to say that, any one of those combination of results could happen. And like I said, if it goes to points, then especially with Lee Wood being the champion, a bit like Josh Taylor, he's the champion, he's at home. It could be one of those, man, where...
Yeah, you put that in my head now. You've put that in my head now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to the fight, though, man.
Because Conlan is going to have to dominate. He's going to have to really... He's not going to have to edge these rounds. He's going to have to leave no room for doubt.
Clearly. I mean, and he said that, to be fair to him. He said, listen, I'm coming to rip the title away. He's made that. He said that on more than one occasion. And, he seems to believe it as well. He's totally confident. And I like that level of confidence. But then so is Lee Wood in a different type of way. He's more quietly confident. He's not really outspoken in that way. He's an old school guy, isn't he? He's come up the old school way, fought on the small cards, built himself up, and now he's in the peak of his career. But he doesn't shout and holler and scream. He's more reserved, but he's got that kind of steely toughness and confidence that I like in fighters.
Yeah.
Whereby you see them and they seem to take everything in their stride, but they still exude that bit of confidence that you think, you know what? I've got no doubts if the going gets hard, this guy will hang, man.
Yeah.
Not like your Chris Colberts who do all that. Chat, slag other fighters off, this and that, so they got no heart. And then he gets in there, you know what I mean, gets dropped, gets beat up, and then starts running around the ring. I don't think you're going to see that this weekend, man. No,
I don't think so. Not at all. Nathan says here, very good fight. You could make a good case for both of them winning. Let's hear it from you then. Who have you got winning this and why?
Damn. You know what? I'm going to lean ever so slightly towards Conlan. I am, because you can't discount his qualities, man. I mean, and some people say, yeah, but he's not really done anything spectacular today. And I would agree with that. But then having said that, he could be one of those guys that he's able to up his level. So the better the opponent in front of him, the more he'll rise to the occasion. And I don't think fighting away from home will phase him that much. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at his amateur history, man, he's traveled all over the world and he's fought at the top level and he's beat those guys as well. Culminating in that Olympic bronze when he got absolutely shafted. Everyone will remember him giving the bird and all that type of stuff. So, yeah, man, I think he has the temperament. I think he clearly has the ability. It's whether he can withstand the power.
Yeah.
But he appears to have a decent chin. I mean, amateur or pro, I've never really seen him on the floor or get hurt or anything like that. I think he's the real deal, man. I think he just needs a fight like this to showcase those skills. It could be the making of a new star come Saturday, man. Yeah, innit? If he wins
I think the ceiling's high for both of them.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going for Conlan to edge it, but there will be some uncomfortable moments in this fight for him. He may even have to get off the floor. It may be one of those ones where it's a controversial decision. It could be one of those where, like I said, at the end of the fight, you're saying, who do you favor? Lee Wood's aggression and punching power or Conlan's skills? You know,
I think most people in here are going for Conlan just as well.
Yeah.
Stefan said on points as well, but it'll be close. Another comment here from Stefan. He says here, what do you make of the Conlan and Wood supporters being separated into sections? I can't recall that happening recently. Quigg, Frampton, maybe the last time it happened. I didn't even know that.
I think that may be a wise thing to do. I really do, because Conlan has said consistently he's bringing down a load of Irish fans. And you know the Irish, they like to get behind their own. That's one thing I really admire about those guys. But then into that sort of intoxicating atmosphere, you got drink. And we've seen it recent boxing shows, man. There's been a lot of trouble recently. Seems to be attracting in boxing some of the football style type of crowds in boxing, which is regrettable actually, because you used to be able to go boxing, and for the most part anyway, you get the fans of I know it did kick off occasionally, but most of the time you get fans in close proximities to each other, fans of rival fighters in close proximity to each other, and not too much happened. But I've noticed recently, man, it's been kicking off quite a bit.
Yeah,
so I think that's probably a wise move, to be honest.
Yeah, Mohammed says here the arena will be filled with Irish fans. There'll be a lot. I mean, there'll be a lot of Nottingham fans too. I mean, this is the first big boxing event in Nottingham for. I know Woods fought there before, but a fight of this magnitude, you got to go back to when Froch was fighting in Nottingham.
Yeah, I remember going to Nottingham when Froch fought Bute, and it is quite a passionate crowd out there as well. They do support their own in Nottingham, but then you got to remember Conlan will be bringing over a load of Irish fans, and let's not forget there's always a lot of Irish people in this country who will support their fellow Irishmen. So it could well be that Conlan's got as much or maybe even more fans on the night than Lee Wood. That'll be an interesting dynamic. Will he be the one that every time he lands you get the massive cheers? You know what I mean? So yeah, man, I can't wait for this fight, man. It's a great fight. And it will be, I think I'm predicting one thing, that it will be definitely a more contested fight than the Amir Khan Kell Brook one was. That was what's one-sided. I don't think this will be.
No, I don't think so. I think there'll be peaks and troughs throughout for both fighters, man. DS has said here they might need to do that for Fury versus White. Yeah, I just got a feeling that will kick off there. I've just got. I don't want to tempt fate, but I just have a feeling that will kick off, man. You look at it, Fury's crowd. You know, Dylan White bringing half of Brixton down there in London. You know what I mean? I can see it already. I can see that already.
The Traveller boys are noted for being a bit lively. You know what I mean? And like you said, Dylan's going to have his crew in there, and then they're not going to be any like, you know what I mean? They're not going to be like lambs. So again, they might have to do exactly that. Although it's kind of difficult to do that, isn't it? I would have thought, especially in a stadium as big as Wembley, with so many fans here, that's going to be difficult to police, like, or to steward.
Well, we saw the Euros, didn't we? We saw how bad that was.
Yeah. And it's going to be a lot of alcohol available.
We don't have a good reputation either, man. No. I've been to their shows before. There's always fights there.
And then you factor into the equation a lot of young men, testosterone-filled young men, all thinking that they can have a fight as well. You know what boxing shows can be like. You throw into the equation drink. And let's be honest, man, I'm going to say this. There might be a bit more potent substances in the place that night other than drink. And you know what happens. So it's a, you know what I mean? It's a real powder keg, man. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be a steward that night, put it that way.
Yeah, no chance.
I don't think it's going to be one of those nights where the steward can just stand there and watch a boxing. I think they're going to be kept working, man. They're going to be kept busy. But listen, man, we hope we're laughing and joking. I hope it doesn't amount to that. But there is a real possibility it could happen based on shows I've been to and based on the two sets of fans. And like I said, Michael Conlan is going to have a significant number of fans in the house. He said that. Eddie Hearn has said that, so he would know from the ticket sales. And like I said, Conlan's crowd are not just going to be Irish people from Ireland. There's going to be Irish people in this country are going to want to go to that fight to support Conlan as well. And Conlan thinks he's going to have as much, if not more, fans than Lee Wood. And you know what? I wouldn't write that out, man. I wouldn't.
I hate to back against Lee. I do like Lee Wood a lot. I've got close ties to Nottingham, as you know. I do really like that city a lot. So I would.
Have you ever met him?
But I just think that Conlan will be the one, skill for skill. I just think can see him pulling it out on a big night like this, having a crowd there supporting him as well, coming all the way down from Ireland and surrounding areas. I know Lee Wood is at home, but I just feel like for Conlan, the ceiling's even higher for him. And I just feel that on a big night like this, as the away fighter, I think it's gonna really he's fights with a chip on his shoulder anyway, and I just think that he'll be the one to pull it through on that night. But I wouldn't be surprised if Lee Wood does it. let's just say I wouldn't be surprised. So let's see what happens, man. But really looking forward to that night. Good undercard as well. Terry Harper's also returning on the bill.
Yeah,
she's actually back in the ring before the person that beat her, Elizabeth Baumgardner. So yeah, see how she gets back into it.
Bit of a bad defeat that last one, man. Remember, she got knocked out on her feet, didn't she?
Yeah.
But hey, I guess, I mean, I've seen little snippets, videos of her online. Seems to be back in the gym, looking good, speaking confidently, saying she's enjoying being back. So we'll see. I would imagine that her opponent probably won't be top draw, because let's face it, if you're coming off a pretty conclusive knockout loss, I would have thought the last thing you want to do is go back in there with somebody that's going to take you to the well once again. So hopefully she's been match right and she gets the win, and yeah, she can further her career in the right way.
Should be a good show, man. Moving on, man. We'll speak about the boy Anthony Joshua, who has created quite a few headlines this week, man. And it really has been down to him being more active on Twitter. If you've been following him on Twitter, man, he's been responding to a lot of suggestions as to who his next opponent should be. Of course, we heard that Anthony Joshua was now going to promote his assistant trainer as his head trainer. I'm not really falling for that right now. I just think that he's currently training him at the moment. I didn't take that conclusively as that is going to be his guy going forward. I just heard that Fernandez will be in his corner for now until he appoints somebody else. Maybe it will be before his next fight. But a lot of talk about who that could be. I don't know if you saw the little Twitter conversation between him and Joe Joyce yesterday.
Yeah.
Then there was talks that AJ might fancy a Wilder fight. If he could pick any of them, that would be the one that he wanted. What's your thoughts on all of this situation, man? Start off with the trainer situation.
Yeah, starting with the trainer situation, I find it bizarre that he traveled all around the world, seemingly, didn't he? Going to all these different gyms. And yet here we are 3, 4, 5 months later, and we still don't know of a definitive trainer yet, unless this guy Fernandez has been promoted to head trainer. I wonder what Rob McCracken thinks about that, by the way. But yeah, I'm slightly, I don't know what to think of this, man. I don't know if I'd use the word disappointed, but slightly surprised that he hasn't announced a full-time trainer yet, number one. And number two, if it is Fernandez, I have to say I'm slightly underwhelmed by that choice. No disrespect to Fernandez. I'm sure he knows his stuff. But like I said, I thought with all this touring around the world, remember, there was all these pictures of him going into all these different gyms, him uploading footage of him doing the pads for all these different trainers. And then you go all around the houses and then you end up back with a guy that was in your camp in the first place. So that's a little weird to me. But hey, man, listen, it's what suits the fighter. Maybe he did the rounds, worked with all those guys and thought, you know what? Actually, those guys are good trainers, but I'm more comfortable with this guy. All I would say about that is, I mean, and listen, Usyk has, it's unfortunate what's going on in that part of the world, and Usyk has bigger fish to fry. He's got greater things occupying in his mind at the moment. And I don't think we're going to see Usyk back in the ring, certainly not this year. Maybe not for a long time. So he's currently incapacitated for circumstances beyond his control. And that leads us to the second part of your question, which is who's the next opponent. Listen, man, I like both of those fights, Joe Joyce or Wilder. But personally, I think Wilder's got 1 foot in retirement already. I can't see him taking the fight. Last time I heard of Wilder, he was in the studio making music. You know, not very good music either, I might have to say. But yeah, the Joe Joyce, listen, man, that's a great fight, isn't it? That's a natural British clash, sort of a Nigerian heritage clash as well.
Joe Joyce, he wanted it in Nigeria.
Yeah. So I doubt
that won't happen in Nigeria. I'd love it to, but it wouldn't.
Yeah, it's fanciful, but I don't think it's going to happen in Nigeria. But I mean, listen, the fight itself, yeah, man, great fight. Very dangerous fight for Joshua. Very dangerous fight. In fact, I was speaking to a colleague of mine who works in the boxing industry this week. I'm not going to name any names, but me and him was chatting for a while, and we talked about that fight. And he said to me, he said, Laurie, if it's the first fight, if it's first 5 rounds, that's where Joshua has his chance to get Joe Joyce out of there if he can. He said, if it goes past that, Laurie, Joe Joyce will probably win. And that got me thinking. I was thinking, right, you know what? I can see that because that engine that Joe Joyce has got.
Remember, AJ has beaten him before, isn't he?
Yeah, he has. Well, this is what my guy was saying. He goes, he's got 5 rounds to get the job done, because he's saying if it goes past that, then you're into Joe Joyce territory. Once he cranks up that engine, the juggernaut engine, man, and it's in full flow, it just starts to run people over. You know what I mean? And I can see that, you know, I can. Because if you think about it, Joshua's never had the greatest stamina, has he?
No.
Especially when he's tried to put on more bulk. He seems to gas out. Or certainly, if not gas out, then you see the work rate diminish after about 8-9 rounds. Whereas the opposite is the case with Joe Joyce, isn't it? It's just physiology. He's just got that type of cardio, you know what I mean? So, yeah, you know what? Having spoken to my mate in the boxing industry, and he gave me that little inkling, I thought to myself, you know what? You're right there. That is probably 100% spot on.
Shall I tell you what I think? I just think that I rate Joe Joyce highly, but I just think AJ is more fluid. I think that he's a better overall fighter for me than Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce is very good, but he hasn't mixed the sort of competition that AJ's been in. And I think a lot of people are, I'm not saying you or your friend, but I think quite a few people, especially on Twitter, are kind of underestimating AJ a little bit, man. Like, they've seen AJ get schooled by Usyk. Usyk does that to most heavyweights, if not all. Do you know what I mean?
Well, listen, Joe Joyce is not going to school
AJ I'd pick him if they were fighting next. I'd pick AJ to win that.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards AJ. It's just that, like I said, my friend was saying that that's how he saw the fight. And don't forget, like, this guy works in the industry. He's been watching these guys since they were young. Now, what I do know is that they did spar together when they were amateurs. And from what I understand, AJ used to get the better of the majority of those sessions. So maybe he's kind of got Joe Joyce's number, which is why he put it out there, didn't he? That I stopped him in a round and I'll be happy to take that fight and rare. But then Joe Joyce is also confident, you know what I mean? Joe Joyce has not been backwards in coming forward saying that he wants to fight. So maybe he's taken certain things out of those sparring sessions as well. So listen, man, you mentioned fluidity. I don't think Joe Joyce is more fluid than most fighters. He certainly wasn't more fluid than Daniel Dubois, but you saw what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You saw what happened, man. He took the best of Daniel Dubois early. And once it started to get into those later rounds, man, he took over. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that'd be a great fight, man.
Them middle rounds will definitely be a bit techie for AJ, man, because that is when you said that is when the juggernaut gets going. And like we've seen in the middle rounds of fights before, AJ might take 1 or 2 rounds off. He might struggle a little bit stamina-wise, but I'm sure he would be aware of that. I'm sure he'll be prepared that this could go the long haul. Joyce has got a good chin, ain't going anywhere. But he's been wobbled before. Do you know what I mean? I've seen him hurt to the body before, hurt to the body pretty badly against, who was it? Was it Brian Jennings? Was it?
Brian Jennings. Yeah.
So listen, I think Joe Joyce is very good and you have a good chance, but I'd still pick AJ to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean towards AJ. And AJ's got the great experience at this level as well. So that's going to count for something. And like you said, he's got the confidence from having beaten him in the amateurs. And like I said, I have it on decent authority that when they used to spar together on the Olympic teams and all that, that he used to give Joe Joyce the business a lot of times. But sparring and fighting, as we all know by now, is 2 completely different things. So it could be one of those whereby Joshua's in front by the halfway mark and looking good. And then down the stretch, Joe Joyce, with that notorious engine he's got, just starts to wear him down. You never know. Yeah, be a great fight though, man. I mean, that's a massive fight for this country, especially.
I think the logical opponent, as Stefan is saying here, will be Otto Wallin. The Joyce fight is great. It sounds great. It makes sense. But I think that listening to Eddie Hearn today as well, somebody like a Wallin, I can see being the opponent, and it would make sense. Do you know what I mean? He's a southpaw. You know what I mean? He's not no Usyk, but it's a good fight to get you ready for the rematch and maybe test yourself with your new trainer against the southpaw. He gave Fury problems, so he didn't look very good in his last fight, though, I have to say. But yeah, I could see it being an Otto Wallin or someone like that being potentially his next opponent.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I mean, that's a watchable fight too. But I think if you went to most people on the street and said, who would you prefer, AJ versus Otto Wallin or AJ versus Joe Joyce, I think I know which most people will go for. But yeah, it might make... See, in terms of entertainment, definitely AJ versus Joe Joyce. But if it's a career decision, you're trying to tick over until... Not to say that Otto Wallin's a tick over opponent, but you know what I'm saying? An interim opponent is the word. Then...
Quick one on Joe Joyce. Hasn't been in the ring. He hasn't been in the ring since he fought Dubois, has he?
No, he hasn't.
I don't know, man. Has his career stagnated a bit since that win? I mean, that was supposed to propel him onto, you know, a much higher level in terms of like getting yourself out there. That was a big win domestically. But I'm just thinking to myself, like, I haven't heard any fight lined up. Joe Joyce seems to be calling people out, saying, look, I'll fight him. Oh, he fought Takam. He fought Carlos Takam. My bad. I forgot about that. But I forgot about it. Do you know what I mean? But he hasn't really... I thought he'd be in a better position than this. And bearing in mind, we did have a pandemic, but I don't know. It just seems like he's out there scrambling for fights right now, man. I don't know.
I think from what I've heard is that they've been trying to get him opponents, but as you can imagine, there's not been a long list of people wanting to take that fight. Because you see, the trouble with Joe Joyce is he's not like an AJ where he's a big name, he's going to generate lots of money. So if you fight him and you lose, then you can say, I'm going to get a great payday. He's not at that level yet, but he's very dangerous. So, you know what I mean? He's not always going to be a choice opponent for people, if you saw what I mean. You know what I mean? Most of the people that fight him do so because they have to, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so he's not box office in that regard, but he's still a very good fighter and one that can do damage. So I guess in some ways it kind of works against him a little bit, you know what I mean? But hey, and that's why, again, I'd love to see that fight because it would be a natural, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. But it just depends on the money, I think. How much would...
I do agree with you. I think if you're Eddie Hearn and you're planning AJ's career, you might go down that Canelo Alvarez strategic management route where you select your opponents wisely and keep the winning record or the winning run going. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Diaz has said here, AJ hasn't got the best engine, but Joe Joyce fights at a slow pace, so I'm not sure AJ's stamina will get tested to the extent that we think.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. Joe Joyce does hit as well. He does have power. He's got that kind of clubbing power in it. It's not like one punch knockout power, but it's kind of cumulative, isn't it? He's heavy-handed, he's strong, tough. And, you know what I mean? He keeps working people, man. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not this way. It would not be an easy night for AJ. Not at all.
No, I don't think so.
Like I said already, if you're Eddie Hearn, you're thinking to yourself, do I really need that work before I fight Usyk again? You know what I mean? It could be counterproductive bringing in a guy like that because even if AJ beats him, it's a kind of fight that could put more miles on the clock for AJ, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who wants to go to war with Joe Joyce knowing you've got Usyk around the corner? Surely you want to go in there and have a less physical night's work and maybe get your opponent out of there early. And then, you know what I mean? So you can build up to that Usyk fight with this, you know what I mean, with a degree of confidence rather than going life and death with Joe Joyce. You know what I mean? Who needs that?
I think the Wallin fight is more likely.
Yeah, I think that's his more favoured destination. Yeah.
Quick one here. Diaz said here, Joyce fights at a pace which will allow AJ to get a second win. He is a tough night's work for anyone, but I more than fancy AJ to get the job done. Let's move on. I want to get your thoughts on this. Conor Benn's next opponent was announced. It's been worst kept secret. We know who it was going to be. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, man. Me and you have been going back and forth over about Conor Benn for the last couple of weeks, man. And I want you to explain this to me. Why do you think Conor Benn turned off the replies on his tweet when he announced that he was fighting Van Heerden? Why do you think that was? No, I'm just
you know
asking,
why? Because there's probably trolls like you saying, "Why don't you fight Virgil Ortiz or something like that, or Jerome Ennis, or you know what I mean?" When really and truly, I'm not really hating on that Van Heerden fight. I've said to you before that Van Heerden's got a reputation as a tough guy. They're still building Conor Benn. He's looked sensational in his last few fights or his recent fights. And they want to keep that momentum going. Why are you going to put him in with a killer when he's still learning the game? He's only 25 years old. And you know what I mean? He's still in that development stage. He's got a year or so of this left, and then you can step him up. You know what I mean? So why are you going to fight the killers now when you don't have to? I mean, if he had to, then fair enough. But he's been very well managed. Again, I use the word strategic management. So yeah, I don't hate on that fight, man. I don't see. I think this is a good fight for him.
When was the last time Van Heerden fought? It was was it the Ennis fight? You know, the one that got like
the no contest one. Yeah, but then even then, Jerome Ennis was well on the way to defeating him. Let's be clear about that. But he didn't actually blow him out, did he? Like what Jerome Ennis has done to quite a few people. He's a tough guy, man. I think previous to that, what is he lost to Errol Spence? Van Heerden? Yeah. So, yeah, listen, man, I mean... Harvey, Errol Spence, and he lost to some guy in a split decision loss abroad somewhere in Europe, which, you know, come on. It's probably hometown cooking, you know what I mean? Listen, man, Van Heerden's not a big name. Only the real aficionados of boxing will probably have heard of him, which is why there'll be a lot of people complaining about the fight. But me personally, knowing boxing the way I do, I don't have a huge problem with his fight, I must say. Well, I mean, who did you want him to fight next?
Yes, I wanted him to fight the people that he was speaking about. Do you know what I mean? The people that he was...
he wanted Adrian Broner, but you didn't want him to fight Adrian Broner.
And let me just say this. Harvey says here, Conor always has the replies off his tweets. So if that is the case, I stand corrected. I thought it was just for that one. But if that is the case, then I got that wrong. I stand corrected. But he's not a fan of the fight either. Now, I don't want that Adrian Broner fight. I have to say, Eddie Hearn said something that made me laugh today. He was doing an interview with Coogan. And obviously, Eddie Hearn is going to push out. He's going to promote the Conor Benn fight, of course. But he said to me, yeah, after this one, we're really throwing him in the deep end, man. We're going to be looking at the likes of Kell Brook, Adrian Broner. And when he said Broner, I'm just like, what? I'm like, what? You mean the guy that ain't been in the ring for a couple of years? The guy that ain't been in the guy that's had all these issues outside of the ring, can't get in shape.
World champion, baby.
Had issues with alcohol, mental health issues. Is that the one who you want to throw in the deep end with? Come on, man. Like, nah, not for me. Not for me.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think the Kell Brook fight would be a good fight for him, man. You know what I mean? I saw enough of Kell Brook against Khan to suggest
he came out and said that Kell Brook priced himself out of a fight with him.
I can imagine that Kell Brook probably did, because Kell Brook's at that stage of his career now where
Kell Brook priced himself out of a fight with Conor Benn. Where's the respect for Kell Brook?
No, but I could see why that might have happened, because if you're Kell Brook, you've probably got one foot in retirement. So in order to motivate himself to not retire, you're going to have to give him the bag. He's not going to fight. I mean, listen, if you're Kell Brook, really and truly, what does beating Conor Benn really do for his career in the wider scheme of things? What does it really do for him? He's scaled the heights. He's won world titles.
That's why I said he should retire.
Yeah, exactly. And he's come back and he's won the grudge match that's been hanging over his head. That was almost like as big as some of his world title wins. So he's done all that. He's made a lot of money. And now you want him to fight this young up-and-coming guy. And let's face it, like I said, what is Kell Brook really going to get from that fight other than money? So that's probably why he said, listen, it's not really what I was looking for, but I'll fight him because I think I can beat him. I've got enough left in the tank. But guess what? If you want me to fight Eddie Hearn, this is what I want. And let's face it as well, and this is a point that should not be lost on people. There's no love lost between him and Eddie Hearn, is there? He's not going to do Eddie Hearn any favors.
No.
Because Eddie Hearn was the one. When Eddie Hearn, by the way, is the one who said he would never work with Kell Brook again. So how comes all of a sudden you're offering him all this money? You know what I mean? What happened to that? When he fought Bud Crawford, remember when?
I think his emotions got the better of him there because they were friends before, weren't they? As well as, you know, working
I
together.
did this for him, and I'll never work with him again after what he did to me. And he went behind my back. I'll never work with him again. Now here he is on the verge of offering Kell Brook money to fight Conor Benn. But I'll tell you what, from what I saw of Kell Brook against Amir Khan, and I know it was against Amir Khan, I know people are going to say, hey, yeah, washed up, blah, 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 but he was very impressive. And I'm not sure if that's a great fight for Conor Benn. You might have to leave that for a while, bro. You know what I mean? Because I'll tell you what, today's version of Kell Brook, I'm sure, would beat Chris Van Heerden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he would.
So what would, let's say Conor Benn, you know, beats Van Heerden pretty convincingly. What would
as you probably would expect him to do. I think with that fight, let's be honest, it's not going to come down to. I think with Van Heerden, the Van Heerden fight, let's be honest, man. Most people watching that are not watching it to see if he wins. They're watching it to see if he can be only the second man to stop him after Errol Spence. So that's the only pressure he's got going into that fight, because I don't think Chris Van Heerden is going to beat Conor Benn. I really don't. So, you know.
Nathan says here, Sky Boxer, I'll let you speak on this, Lloyd. I know you get on well with Dan Aziz, but we saw the news come through yesterday or the day before, I believe it was, and that was Sky Boxer signing Dan Aziz to a long-term deal. He's also got another fight lined up in March. What is it? And is it the end of this couple of weeks, actually? I believe.
Yeah. The end of, I think it's 26th of March or something like that. But yeah, I'm really excited for Dan. He did send me a voice note after it had been announced. And I congratulated him. And he said in the voice note that he left that once the opponent's been announced, which he hasn't been yet, he actually invited me and you to come down to his gym and watch him work out and spar and maybe do an interview. He did invite us to do that, so definitely.
Let's do it, man.
Yeah, definitely want to take him up on it. But yeah, I'm really chuffed for him, man. Dan's one of those good guys in boxing, man. You know what I mean? That you don't always see. Trust me, the guy is a proper stand-up guy, very nice, humble man, but all about business. You know what I mean? And I'm really pleased for him because he's not been given any favors. He's come up the hard way. I remember speaking to him. I hope I'm not betraying too much confidence, but he had a bit of a rough time with COVID coming because, you know what I mean, he was finding it difficult to make money. You know what I mean? And he was having to do like regular jobs. This kind of jobs that you wouldn't expect a guy at that level of boxing to be doing. But now he's sorted himself out. He's got sponsors and all the rest of it. He's got titles. So yeah, man.
Happy for him, man.
Full steam ahead. I'm really chuffed for him. And I really hope that this deal will prove fruitful, fortuitous for him. I'm sure it will, man, because he does put the work in. Yeah. He's very, very dedicated to his craft. I can tell you that for nothing.
Big up to Earth Extremities. They've said here, due to the Ukraine conflict, do you think sanctions will strike boxing as well? We have seen over the last couple of weeks some sanctions being imposed. Like, for example, I saw the British Boxing Board of Control today saying that they were imposing sanctions on any Russian-based fighters. So I don't think that they'll be eligible to box on one of these shows over here. We saw the sanctioning bodies as well release a joint statement, all four of them, speaking about how they wouldn't sanction any Russian fighters. And it's not something for me to really
How comes the sanctioning Bivol versus Canelo then?
Yeah, so the WBA, I think, are the only ones that are not doing that. But yeah,
I wonder why that is.
I don't really know what to say.
I'll tell you why. They won't pay it.
Yeah.
They're going to sanction a Canelo fight because they won't pay it.
So basically, you're saying that this ain't just them. It's not what they're doing. It's just. You're not saying.
I think with boxing, they're going to do what they always do: one rule for one and one rule for another. So, for example, like I said, there's no blanket ban because otherwise, because I know you probably heard this as well. I've read in recent days where it's either Vladimir or Vitaly. I think it was Vladimir. Klitschko's come out and said that
Bivol should be
taken off the card against Canelo, but that's not going to happen, is it? You know what I mean? That is not going to happen. And again, that's due to Canelo and the power that he has in boxing.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff, man, is just flim flam, innit? Let's be honest, man. It's easily applied to most Russian fighters because they don't carry no weight. Are they going to stop Beterbiev from defending his titles? He's Russian. You know what I mean? What they'll do is the lower level Russian guys who are seeking work abroad, they'll probably get sanctioned. But then your guys who hold titles or guys who are fighting Canelo, nothing will happen to them. So we'll see what happens, man.
I'll tell you one fight that would affect. That was Buatsi and Vlasov. Because that was scheduled, wasn't it? That would have happened over here. That's not looking like that will happen now. Then
no.
We'll see.
Is Vlasov Russian or Ukrainian?
He's Russian, isn't he?
Is he? Oh,
yeah, I'm pretty sure he's Russian.
I thought he was from Ukraine. But yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah. But like I said, the way it will work, we all know how this thing goes. The lesser the name, the less money involved. It's very easy to apply bans to these. I know I'm sounding kind of cynical here, but I'm sounding that way because I've got experience of how boxing is run. It's all about money. So like I said, where is the moral turpitude in terms of the Bivol versus Canelo fight? Bivol's clearly Russian. If you looked at Bivol's previous fights, he comes into the ring with the Russian flag on his shorts and his robe. So he reps Russia. They'll probably say to him not to have the Russian flag on his shorts and his robe for this fight, but he's clearly Russian. And that fight will go ahead. Simple as that.
Stefan says here, Canelo gets those special rules.
He does.
I'm just sure.
And like I said, he's sanctioning that fight for WBA. For them, it's payday. You know what I mean? They want payday. It's the Canelo show, man. What Canelo wants, Canelo gets.
Mohammed Zishan has said here, Daryl, who would you like to see Conor Benn fight apart from Hooker? Easy, bro. Easy. I've been saying it. David Avanesian. I'd like to see that. I don't think we will.
The same David Avanesian who lost to Lamont Peterson,
yeah, that one. Yeah. I'd like to see him against him. I think the thing is, I think Conor Benn could beat him. It's not like I think Avanesian will watch him. I think that's a very good fight. Just want to see it.
As they say in boxing, yeah, but what does he bring to the table?
Yeah. That's the problem.
Who has he beat? What's he done? You know what I mean? How many pay-per-views has he sold? You know, you get that usual stuff, don't you?
Francisco,
right. Who was he for?
Francisco says here, damn, man, I was hoping for a Canelo-less show. We haven't had one of those in a while, but the critique is valid. I was wondering to myself today, I was like, I wonder, there's no Canelo topic today, but I wonder if it's going to get mentioned. And of course, it got mentioned at some point. So, yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, he is the so-called, not by me, but by you guys, the king of boxing, isn't it? So if we're talking about boxing for an hour and a half, it's only expected that at some point in the show, his name's going to get mentioned. But I think it is a meaningful comparison. Because like I said, who's going to say to Bivol, you are scratched from that card? They've signed a contract, you know what I mean? The posters are up, you know what I mean? The guys are in camp. It's going to take a very brave man to even say to Canelo and, you know what I mean, and all those guys that take Bivol off the card. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, it isn't. Had it have been a lesser name than Canelo, it could well have been in force, but I just don't think it will.
Ian Hammond says here, okay, every time Laurie mentions Canelo, my face grins. Nathan has said here, what's your thoughts on, you've mentioned Diego Pacheco before, haven't you? You've said you were looking forward to seeing his rise as a super middleweight.
Yeah. But I'm also looking forward to seeing the Cuban guy, David Morrell.
Oh, no, it was David Morrell, wasn't it? It wasn't that, it was David Morrell you were speaking about.
Yeah.
That
guy lets him have the full package, man. And let's not rule out Zurdo Ramirez either. Zurdo, you'd have heard of him, haven't you? He's moving up in weight now. Yeah, he wants that Canelo fight. I saw something recently where he said he sparred with Canelo a few times and he always felt he got the better of him. But then, you know, people are going to say that stuff, so we'll see.
Yeah. Staying around the middleweight division, there were news this week about PBC Al Heyman offering Jaime Munguia and Golden Boy the opportunity to fight Jamal Charlo this summer. So June, July, Jaime Munguia, Jamal Charlo, absolutely makes sense for me. I'd love to see it. Jaime Munguia has also been...
he's not in prison by then.
Well, he's got enough offer on the table from the WBO to face Janibek, the guy who obviously was lined up to fight Andrade. But do you think Golden Boy will take that? Do you think Golden Boy?
Yeah, I don't think they'll take that fight. They've been very studious in the way they're moving Jaime Munguia. He was obviously a very talented fighter, but he's also pretty young, and he's obviously still got his flaws. I mean, he's got literally no defense. Although I'd say his last fight, he was moving his head a bit more in this. So I think that's how they kind of look at him, as still a bit of a work in progress. Now, if you're a bit of a work in progress, why would you put him in with Charlo unless you've seen obvious signs of Charlo slipping? Because let's face it, Munguia's not going to knock Charlo out, is he? So it's going to be a long night for him and a dangerous night for him. So I don't see them making that fight anytime soon. And the way the Charlos are going, you know what I mean, there's no guarantee that they're going to be around to fight. I mean, I was joking to you today, wasn't I? I mean, the other one Jamal got arrested earlier in the month.
Yeah, that's who it would have been against Jamal. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Jamal's now been arrested recently as well. So they've gone from lions only to what I'm now labeling them felons only. No, all jokes aside, man, those guys really do need to sort themselves out outside the ring, man, because they're like ticking time bombs, both of them. I've never seen anything like it. They are seriously ticking. They're the kind of guys, if they're not occupied by boxing, you worry about them outside the ring because they've just got this penchant, man, for getting into trouble.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, they're both very talented fighters, man. I mean, I don't like the way they move a lot of the time, but they just look like the type of guys that need to be kept busy, because if they're not kept busy, you know what they say about the devil and idle hands, you know what I mean? They just seem to keep getting themselves in trouble. That's a fact. So, you know, I want to see Charlo back in the ring soon, man. He needs to fight. It must be in wild. I mean, we know Jamel's got this fight with Castano coming up.
Yeah.
Jamal Charlo, when's his next fight? I mean, he's not going to get the Canelo fight, is he? That's clear. There's talk about him fighting Benavidez, which I think
there's talks about him and Caleb Plant as well.
Yeah, there's talks of it, man. But when is he going to sign on the dotted line and get these fights done? Because, like I said, man, he needs to get back in the ring.
Yeah,
we worry about these guys when they're not. I shouldn't have to say that. I mean, they should keep themselves professional. But I guess some people find that easier than others. And the Charlos, boy, with the way they are and their mood swings and their anger management, man, they seem to have problems outside the ring, bro. Both of them.
What about sticking with Munguia quickly before we move on to Mel? There's also Janibek. Now, I ain't seen too much of him, if I'm being real. But I know it's a dangerous opponent for him. I could still see Golden Boy going down that road rather than going with the PBC. It's a rare offer from the PBC offering one of Golden Boys to come over there and fight on their show.
That's because they see him as food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's pure and simple. The fact that they're going to reach out to promotional company that they really do business with and try and make that fight suggests to me that they see that as a very winnable fight for Charlo, which it is, to be honest.
So do I, to be honest.
Yeah. It's a very winnable fight for him. Whether, like you said, I doubt whether much Oscar De La Hoya will take the fight, because you got to look at De La Hoya as well. Like, I mean, who have they got in their stable that's potential stars? Him and Ryan Garcia. And Ryan Garcia is
they've got Virgil. They got Virgil.
But as world champions, I think it's only Munguia they got, really, isn't it, at the moment?
Well, he was champion at a lower weight. He ain't really cracked on at middleweight.
No. So they'll want to keep him unbeaten as much as they can, really. Again, strategic management, as I've said.
Yeah, they got Zerdo as well. I mean, they've got a couple of fighters now, Golden Boy.
But no real stars, have they? That's the thing. Because as good as Zerdo is, he's not really a household name, not even close to a household name. He's kind of flown under the radar a little bit. Ryan Garcia has not realized his potential yet. And even Virgil Ortiz, he's a potential, but he's not fighting for a world title anytime soon, is he? I know he's got this fight against McKinson. He'll be expected to beat McKinson, but then we'll see who he fights after that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, there's no guarantees in that welterweight, you know, because because you got Spence and you got Crawford, and then you got guys like Boots Ennis around, Thurman. It's deep, that division, man. It's stacked. So
big up WM here. He's put, good evening, gents. Keep up the great work. Shout out to yourself, WM. We've got BFV in the house, Boxing First Floor. Go and subscribe to that channel, guys, if you haven't already, man. Very good channel. Shout out to BFV all the way over there in the States, man. Checking in. Big up you, bro. Appreciate you every time. Mel Charlo, did you see the little spat? I mean, he was on Brian Cluster's, he was on that podcast that he has. And he was going off on Bud Crawford after he heard that Crawford was considering moving up to 154 if he wasn't able to get the Spence fight. But did you see Jermell Charlo's rant at Terence Crawford on there? Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. It was, I have to admit, it was quite an entertaining interview. I mean, it's interesting because Brian Custer didn't really get much of a word in, did he?
No.
He opened up the show and then basically Jermell Charlo used it as a way of getting certain things off his chest. He started off with the Castano rant, which I found that was interesting as well. He's talking about the lack of drug testing, and as soon as drug testing had been announced, 2 days later, Castano drops out the fight of injury. I did find that interesting, I must admit, because we know these types of things do go on in boxing. So for him to be so open with that in a way that Jermell Charlo is, because he even said on the podcast, and he goes, I'm not really supposed to be telling you this. They tried to stop me from talking about it, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I thought it was a very entertaining interview and an insight into how that guy's mind works. He's got what I would call quite an unfettered mind, isn't it? Basically meaning that anything that comes into his head, he's going to say it, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. He's just going to talk, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, man, I mean,
it's not realistic, though, is it? It's not realistic, though, is it?
What's that?
Charlo and Bud.
Not right now, because let's face it, man, he's got a big fight coming up against Castano. Some people would say he's lucky to still have those belts. So, you know what I mean? That fight against Castano is going to tell us a lot. But if you could get through the Castano fight and Crawford can't secure the fights at welterweight and goes up to light middle, I could see that fight happening potentially. Because it's not like Bud's going to be scared, is it? You know what I mean? Because he called him out anyway. So that would be a great fight, actually. Although you'd have to make Charlo the favorite in terms of size and stuff like that. But don't write Crawford off, man. To me, anyway, still pound for pound #1 fighter in the world. I could see him moving up and doing well.
What is going on with Crawford, man? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is happening?
The fights. No one wants to fight him, man. Simple as that. It's not Crawford, is it? Let's be honest. We know by now, you just see that guy, the way he moves, the way he operates, the way he talks. You know that it's not him. He's trying to get fights, but it's whether he's trying to get meaningful fights. And it would appear that certain people out there don't want him to get his shot. And like I said, and I'm an Errol Spence fan, but I'm on the record as saying it, and I'll repeat it. I think it's down to Errol Spence and his people why that fight's not yet been made. It's not Bud's fault. They keep hiding behind this, yeah, you see, he's got to take less money and rare. But if they really wanted that fight to be made, they could make the fight.
Let's see, man. Errol Spence is going up against Ugas next. I've got no issues with that fight, to be fair. I mean,
no, I'm not hating on that.
Title, but we'll see, man. I just think Crawford, he's not getting any younger. Do you know what I mean? And
but then neither is Errol Spence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Errol Spence got a fight lined up.
Yeah, but that fight needs to happen after Ugas, because fair enough, I'm not hating on the Ugas fight because it's a unification fight. But once that fight is out the way, man, there's no excuses. That fight with Crawford has to be made.
Yeah. Does Crawford wait until that fight's over, or does he take a fight in the interim? He did fight Porter in November.
Yeah, I mean, he does need an interim fight, I think, definitely. And I think he will try and pursue one, but it's who they can get him in the ring with. I mean, I know Virgil Ortiz has been calling him out, but that's a possibility. But then if you're Crawford and his people, would you want that fight before Spence? I'm not so sure.
Furman one makes sense for me, but I just don't know.
Furman don't want to fight Bud, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think he'd take that right.
I don't think, despite what he's been saying recently, he doesn't. Deep down, you can actually see in his body language he's not that keen on the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I can't see that fight happening.
I'll tell you what, though, if Bud did move that, imagine a build up to that fight. Bud and Jamel wouldn't be able to. He wouldn't be able to shout off his. Bud ain't gonna have that. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's one of those increased security for the press conferences and so forth, because that could kick off before they get to the ring. Given the kind of energy around the Charlos, and given Bud's kind of no nonsense self, I don't think.
Maybe Josh Taylor will be the one. Do you know what I mean? He is moving up. He will be the mandatory for.
I can't see Josh Taylor jumping into a fight with a Bud Crawford or something like that just yet, especially after this recent performance. He's probably going to want to. I think his reputation and his confidence took a bit of a hit. Josh Taylor's not going to want to say that publicly because he's another one. He's an alpha male, macho, tough talking, rare. He's not going to want to admit it. But you could see visibly he was quite taken aback by the criticism he received, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
You can see it just by the defensive posture he's taken when answering a lot of the questions surrounding the fight. And the fact that he still refuses to really give Jack Catterall his proper credit. He's kind of been more recently said, credit to Jack, he fought a good fight. But you can see, innit? He's a bit stung, man.
He don't really wanted,
No, you don't really want it.
I think some of the criticism, there was a bit even more vitriol.
A little bit, man. It's got to.
I think there was even a bit more vitriol with that criticism because it was Josh Taylor as well. Because
I think so.
Was that kind of guy, and I think people like, let me get at him. But,
exactly. Yeah, because like I said, when you're a macho man, you're there to be taken down, aren't you? There's nothing in this world that people like seeing better than when a guy gets humbled like that. Because before that, Josh Taylor was this sort of aggressive, in-your-face, macho, very sort of on it, wasn't he? You know what I mean? You say the slightest little thing about you, he's going to push back, come back at you hard. So I think there's a school of thought out there. Some people thought, you know what? Now's the time, you know what I mean? I'm going to tell him what I think of him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure that a lot of that went on. But to be fair to him, man, he's still a very good fighter. I mean, listen, man, he's still one of the top fighters in the world. I'm not going to, let's give Jack Catterall credit. He fought the perfect fight. They did their homework. They came up with a really good game plan. And to be fair to Catterall, he executed it well. But I still, for me, think that Josh Taylor is the better overall fighter. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I do.
I think his ceiling is higher.
That night, I just think that night, it just was a bad night for him.
It was a bad night. And then you do have to, I don't want to make excuses for Josh Taylor. He's big enough and ugly enough to look after himself in that department. But I do think the weight probably did play a part because we said it, didn't we? In the week leading up to the fight, man. He looked drained on the scales, man. There's no doubt about it. So it's about time. And then he's 31 now. You can't keep draining yourself like that, you know? At some point, you have to move up. Look at Crawford. He started off as a lightweight. Then he went to light welter. Now he's up at welterweight. You know what I mean? And it's not that much difference in age between Terence Crawford and Josh Taylor, is it? A couple of years. He does need to move up in weight now. Forcing yourself, boiling yourself down to make light welterweight and then having to rehydrate and replenish your fluids in the space of 24 hours. There's a certain amount of time where you can get away with that. After a while, it becomes harder, which is why these guys will move up in weight. So I think he does need to move up in weight now.
Let's see how that plays out, man. I just think that in the interim, going back to Bud, I'd like to see him have something. I mean, he did fight against Porter, and he was out for a year before that as well. I think it's just a consistency of not being out there that may hurt him later on in his career, which would be a big shame. But we'll see how it plays out with all of that. But we're going to lock it off for today anyway, Laurie, man. 1 hour, 20 minutes on the clock. Another great show. Shout out to everybody that joined. Hit the like button, of course. Share the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Laurie, your final thoughts before we close out?
Yeah, man, I've enjoyed being on the show as usual. Great for you to allow me to join here to, indulge me in my passion, which is boxing. I just want to say, before we go, actually, quick shout out to Guillermo Rigondo. You may have heard. You probably have heard about.
Yeah. I did hear.
You're a pressure cooker, no less. Exploded in his face And at the time of the accident, they were saying that Rigondeaux was in danger of losing his eyesight. I think at the time when I first heard about this, they were saying he only had 20% vision in his eyes. But they're now saying that they expect him to make a full recovery. It's not certain, but they're hoping that he'll make a full recovery. And certainly we hope that he does, because Rigondeaux has been one of my favorite fighters in recent years. I think out of all the fighters I could think of in recent years, he has been, the way his career has been mishandled and he's been treated, man, is a real shame. And for this to happen to him now as well, when he's in the twilight of his career, he's just recently coming off a loss where he got dropped as well, isn't he? So it's probably time for him to hang them up, but I doubt if he will. But even so, it was a terrible accident, real shame, and we're hoping that he'll pull through.
He's been through so much, ain't he, man?
Yeah, man.
In his career, in his life, everything.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Not good times for him. Like I said, he's coming off a loss where he got dropped. People are saying he should hang them up, but we all know he's not going to hang them up, is he? And then for that to happen, that accident with the pressure cooker blowing up in your face, wow. Can you imagine that?
Oh,
horrible.
Scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. So, yeah, let's hope and pray, man, that he can make a full recovery and get his eyesight back. And then I would imagine, not that I want him to, I'd like to see him retire, but let's face it, I think he's going to fight on. So, yeah.
We'll see, man. But listen, thanks again for everyone tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week. Big up to yourself, man. Peace out.